Imagine this scene. It's a quiet Sunday evening, and you're sitting at your kitchen table with a stack of bills, a calculator, and a knot in your stomach that just won't go away. You're thinking about your aging mother who might need care soon, wondering if your job is as secure as it used to be, calculating whether you can actually afford to retire someday, and quietly panicking about what would happen if your furnace died tomorrow. Does this feel painfully familiar? Here's something that might surprise you. There's a specific savings number that can quiet most of that mental noise and fundamentally shift how you move through the second half of your life. And contrary to what you might assume, that number isn't $1 million. It's not even close to six figures. It's $10,000. Most women believe that financial peace requires massive wealth or a winning lottery ticket. But there's compelling research in both behavioral economics and psychology that shows certain savings thresholds create profound shifts in how we experience daily life. That first transformative threshold is more accessible than you think. I'm Sarah, and I've spent years studying the intersection of women's finances, life transitions, and the unique challenges we face after 40. If you've ever wondered what it genuinely feels like to have a financial cushion beneath you, and more critically, how reaching that milestone reshapes every choice you make going forward, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing and leaving a like if this conversation resonates with you. Now, before we explore what makes $10,000 such a pivotal amount, let me describe what daily life looks like when you're operating without that foundation. You understand that sensation when you're standing in the pharmacy aisle, quietly debating whether you can afford the medication your doctor recommended, or whether you should wait another week and hope the symptoms improve on their own, or when your adult daughter mentions she's planning a destination wedding and your first thought isn't joy, but rather dread about how you'll possibly manage the travel costs without going into debt. This is the daily existence for countless women navigating midlife without adequate savings. Every financial choice becomes an exhausting mental exercise. Every unanticipated expense feels like standing at the edge of a cliff. Now you're perpetually reacting to money problems rather than thoughtfully directing your financial future. You're surviving rather than building. But here's where the conversation becomes genuinely hopeful. There's a documented psychological phenomenon that occurs when you accumulate your first $10,000. And it has absolutely nothing to do with purchasing luxury items or treating yourself to expensive indulgences. Actually, most women who achieve this milestone don't significantly alter their spending patterns whatsoever. The genuine transformation operates on a much deeper and more lasting level. The initial change is how you relate to uncertainty. When your savings account shows zero or close to it, every decision carries tremendous weight. Considering a career change at 52, downsizing your home, or even booking a modest vacation becomes this overwhelming source of anxiety because you understand that one misstep could unravel everything you've worked to maintain. However, when you have $10,000 established as your foundation, those identical decisions suddenly feel approachable. You're probably not going to immediately resign from your position and relocate to a coastal town to paint watercolors, but you might finally summon the courage to have that difficult conversation with your manager about flexible hours. You might feel ready to invest in additional training that could open doors to consulting work. You might actually consider that part-time business idea you've been quietly researching for 3 years. The cushion doesn't encourage irresponsibility, but it grants you permission to consider possibilities beyond merely getting through until the next direct deposit arrives. There's also something remarkable that occurs in your nervous system when you observe a 5-figure balance in your savings account for the first time. Researchers studying stress physiology have discovered that financial stability genuinely reduces cortisol production, which is your body's central stress hormone. This indicates that reaching $10,000 doesn't merely improve your finances on paper. It literally transforms how your body processes everyday stressors. Consider the last time something went wrong with your home, perhaps a leaking roof or a malfunctioning appliance. If you're managing without savings, that repair estimate might as well be a devastating diagnosis. Or you're immediately spiraling about whether to put it on a credit card with 22% interest, whether you'll need to ask your brother for a loan, or whether you can somehow ignore the problem until it becomes catastrophic. But when you have $10,000 available, that same repair estimate becomes a manageable inconvenience. You're frustrated, certainly, but you're not lying awake catastrophizing. This transition from crisis mode to mild aggravation might appear insignificant, but it creates cascading effects throughout your entire existence. When you're not perpetually consumed by money worries, you think more clearly in general. Your sleep improves dramatically, your focus at work sharpens, you're more emotionally available for your grandchildren, your friends, your partner. When financial anxiety infiltrates every dimension of human functioning, and dissolving that anxiety liberates cognitive resources you can redirect toward genuinely improving your circumstances. But here's something most people never consider about the $10,000 milestone. The greatest benefit doesn't emerge from actually spending those dollars. It emerges from simply knowing those dollars exist. This concept is what financial researchers describe as the security fund phenomenon, and it's arguably the most overlooked principle in personal finance education. A security fund isn't truly about the emergencies themselves. It's about the profound calm that accompanies knowing you possess the capacity to weather emergencies. Most women who establish $10,000 in savings never actually deplete it responding to crises. Instead, they deploy it toward advancement. They fund professional certifications that increase their earning power. They provide seed capital for small ventures. They relocate closer to support systems or medical care. Or they simply possess the psychological bandwidth to concentrate on expanding their income because they're not perpetually consumed with basic financial survival. There's also an assurance element that's challenging to measure but impossible to overlook. When you're aware you have resources in reserve, you present yourself differently in the world. You negotiate with greater conviction. You're more comfortable declining unfavorable arrangements because desperation isn't driving your decisions. This assurance frequently generates superior career outcomes, healthier relationships, and more favorable life circumstances across the board. Now, you might be calculating that $10,000 represents an insurmountable goal, particularly if you're currently struggling to set aside even $75 each month between supporting adult children and managing your own expenses. But here's what's genuinely fascinating about human behavior. The most difficult aspect isn't accumulating the money itself. The most difficult aspect is embracing the identity of a woman who prioritizes savings. Most women approach saving like it's a temporary restriction. They slash their spending drastically for 8 weeks, save intensely, then experience burnout, and gradually resume their previous patterns. However, women who genuinely reach $10,000 don't conceptualize saving as a short-term deprivation. They conceptualize it as evolving into a different version of themselves. This identity evolution is essential because it shapes every financial choice you encounter. When you perceive yourself as someone who builds wealth, you begin recognizing expense reduction opportunities that previously escaped your notice. You become more resourceful about generating supplementary income. You begin planning for decades rather than fixating on immediate desires. The encouraging aspect of this journey is that it becomes progressively simpler. Accumulating your first $1,000 is genuinely difficult. It demands meaningful lifestyle modifications and sustained discipline. But accumulating your second $1,000 becomes noticeably more natural because you've already established the practices and perspective. By the time you're progressing toward your seventh or $8,000, the process operates almost on autopilot. There's also a practical mathematical truth that makes $10,000 especially significant for women in midlife. This sum can address the overwhelming majority of unexpected costs that financially destabilize people during their 40s, 50s, and beyond. Vehicle repairs, dental work, emergency home maintenance, caring for an aging parent during a health crisis, job displacement. Most of these circumstances can be navigated with less than $10,000. This means that upon reaching this threshold, you're essentially protected from most of the financial disruptions that trap women in the perpetual paycheck-to-paycheck pattern. But perhaps the most meaningful shift that accompanies saving your first $10,000 is your evolving relationship with money as a concept. Rather than viewing money as something that simply vanishes from your bank account each month, you begin understanding it as a resource that expands your possibilities. Prior to having savings, money feels limited and fleeting. Every dollar spent represents a dollar permanently gone. But when you have $10,000 serving as your financial base, you begin recognizing that money can actually generate more money. This is precisely when women start genuinely engaging with concepts like retirement contributions, dividend investments, and passive income strategies. Not because they suddenly transformed into financial experts, but because they finally possess the mental capacity to contemplate beyond just covering essential bills. When you're not perpetually anxious about affording groceries, you can begin exploring catch-up contributions to your retirement accounts. When you're not stressed about utility payments, you can start investigating index fund strategies. Here's something that might genuinely surprise you. The woman with $10,000 saved is actually positioned closer to long-term financial security than someone with empty savings, even if that second woman earns significantly more annually. Why? Because the saver has cultivated the most crucial competency in wealth building, which isn't generating income, it's retaining income. You likely know women who command substantial salaries but somehow remain perpetually financially strained. Now, if they drive current-year vehicles, maintain expensive wardrobes, and dine at restaurants charging $30 for an entree, yet they possess no reserves whatsoever. Meanwhile, you might know a woman earning a modest teacher's salary who has managed to accumulate meaningful savings through intentional, conscious spending. The distinction isn't income level, it's mindset. And reaching $10,000 in savings functions as an intensive course in developing sound financial thinking. You learn to differentiate between genuine needs and passing wants. You develop skill at reducing costs without experiencing deprivation. Most critically, you cultivate patience and the ability to defer gratification, which represents perhaps the most valuable financial capability anyone can acquire. Now, let's examine what $10,000 can genuinely accomplish for you in concrete situations. First, it addresses virtually any vehicle repair short of complete engine replacement. Most automotive emergencies cost between $600 and $2,500. With $10,000 in savings, car troubles transition from financial emergencies to temporary inconveniences you handle calmly. Healthcare surprises become navigable as well. Even with imperfect insurance, most urgent care appointments, unexpected imaging, or minor outpatient procedures fall comfortably within this range. You won't cover major hospitalization with $10,000, but you can manage the vast majority of health situations that emerge without warning during our 40s, 50s, and 60s. Job loss, which represents probably the most frightening financial scenario for women in midlife, especially those who've experienced career gaps, becomes something you can genuinely survive. $10,000 provides approximately 4 to 8 months of breathing room to secure new employment, depending on your monthly obligations. That's sufficient time to be thoughtful and selective about your next position, rather than frantically accepting the first opportunity that materializes out of desperation. But here's where this becomes genuinely exciting. Having $10,000 doesn't merely shield you from catastrophes. It actually generates opportunities that simply wouldn't exist otherwise. Perhaps you discover a project management certification that could elevate your salary by $12,000 annually, but it requires $1,500 in upfront tuition. Without savings, this remains a frustrating impossibility. With your financial foundation established, it becomes an obvious investment in yourself, Or maybe a colleague mentions she's launching a small catering business and seeking a modest partner to help with initial equipment costs. Without savings, you can only express your support and wish her well. With $10,000 available, you have the choice to participate in something that could potentially alter your financial trajectory for years to come. I'm certainly not recommending you invest your entire emergency fund in your neighbor's speculative venture, but possessing genuine options feels remarkably different from possessing no options whatsoever. The psychological benefits extend well beyond purely financial choices, too. When you have money saved, your sleep quality improves substantially. And I mean this in literal, measurable terms. Research consistently demonstrates that women with adequate emergency savings report dramatically better sleep than those without any financial cushion. It turns out that money stress ranks among the primary causes of insomnia and sleep disturbance, and addressing that stress delivers immediate, tangible health improvements. Your closest relationships benefit significantly as well. Financial stress is consistently cited as one of the leading contributors to marital strain, family tension, and conflict in close relationships. When you're not perpetually preoccupied with bills and shortfalls, you have more emotional capacity to invest in the people who matter most to you. You're less reactive, less anxious, and more genuinely present during conversations and shared experiences. There's also something meaningful to acknowledge about the confidence that accompanies having money in reserve. You enter salary negotiations differently when you understand you don't desperately require any particular position. You're more inclined to advocate for yourself regarding benefits and compensation because you're not operating from a foundation of fear and scarcity. This confidence frequently generates better job offers and improved compensation packages, establishing a positive cycle that accelerates your financial advancement. But let's honestly address the obvious concern. $10,000 might feel like an astronomical figure if you're currently managing paycheck to paycheck, while perhaps supporting aging parents or helping adult children who haven't fully launched. The reassuring reality is that you don't need to accumulate it all simultaneously. Actually, attempting to save too aggressively frequently backfires because it's simply not maintainable. The most successful savers I've encountered began with genuinely modest amounts, perhaps $40 monthly, perhaps even $20. The essential element is consistency, not the magnitude of your initial contribution. Once you establish the practice of saving something every single month, you can incrementally increase that amount as your circumstances improve or as you identify ways to reduce expenses. Here's a perspective that might motivate you. The average American household spends over $2,400 annually on subscription services, convenience purchases, and small daily expenses that barely register. That doesn't even include larger recurring costs like premium cable packages or unused gym memberships. If you could redirect even half of that spending towards savings, you'd reach your $10,000 within approximately 4 years. I'm not proposing you should never enjoy a coffee out or cancel every small pleasure in your life, but I am highlighting that most women have more flexibility in their spending than they initially recognize. The distinction between someone who accumulates savings and someone who doesn't typically comes down to awareness and deliberate intention, not income bracket. The cumulative impact of having $10,000 extends far beyond the immediate security it offers. It transforms how you evaluate risk, how you respond to opportunities, and how you envision your future decades. Most significantly, it demonstrates to yourself that you're capable of achieving meaningful financial objectives, which generates momentum for even greater accomplishments ahead. When you have your first $10,000 saved, you begin thinking differently about your next $10,000 and then the next milestone beyond that. Before you fully realize it, you're on a trajectory toward genuine financial independence in retirement. Not because you received an inheritance or experienced extraordinary luck, but because you developed the habits and perspective that make wealth building inevitable over time. The transformation that occurs when you save your first $10,000 isn't merely about the dollars themselves. It's about becoming the kind of woman who has money saved. Knowing that identity shift creates effects that ripple into every corner of your existence in ways you probably haven't anticipated. Let's discuss something called decision exhaustion, which sounds like corporate jargon, but describes a genuine psychological experience. Every single day, you make dozens of minor financial calculations. Should I purchase the organic vegetables or the conventional ones? Can I justify meeting my friend for lunch, or should I suggest coffee instead? Is it worth paying for expedited shipping, or can I wait 2 weeks? Each of these micro decisions depletes mental energy, and by evening, you're exhausted from constantly computing whether you can afford things and what the trade-offs will be. But here's what shifts when you have $10,000 in savings. Suddenly, the majority of these daily financial calculations become irrelevant. You're not choosing between store brand and name brand medications because you're anxious about your account balance. You're choosing based on what actually works better for you. This might appear trivial, but imagine how much mental clarity you'd reclaim if you stopped performing survival-based arithmetic 40 times daily. A woman I know described the first time she walked into a home improvement store after achieving $10,000 in savings. She nearly became emotional, not because she purchased anything extravagant or unnecessary, but because she recognized she could focus on what her home actually needed rather than what she could barely afford. That represents a dimension of freedom most women don't even recognize they're lacking until they finally experience it. Now, let's be completely honest about something that financial guidance often glosses over. Having $10,000 saved doesn't make you wealthy. It doesn't mean you can immediately retire and pursue your passion for pottery full-time. You're still going to pause before purchasing a $700 appliance you don't urgently need. But what it provides is breathing room, and breathing room serves as the foundation for every sound financial decision. When you're not desperately gasping for financial air, you can actually think strategically about your money, rather than simply reacting to whatever emergency surfaces next. Perhaps you notice your homeowner's insurance renewal is approaching, and you actually have the bandwidth to request competing quotes instead of automatically accepting the renewal. Perhaps you recognize that your car insurance has crept up significantly, and you can invest time comparing alternatives without worrying about minor switching inconveniences. These optimizations might only preserve $75 or $125 monthly, but when you're not stressed about finances, you're far more likely to notice and pursue these opportunities. And those modest improvements compound over time into substantial savings that make your next financial milestone even more attainable. Here's something intriguing about human psychology that most people overlook. When you have zero savings, know every single dollar feels precious because losing it means you're one step closer to genuine financial crisis. But when you have $10,000 saved, individual dollars begin feeling less critical, which actually makes you more willing to spend thoughtfully on things that could expand your earning capacity or improve your quality of life. This seems paradoxical, but it's incredibly significant. The woman with no savings might decline a $75 professional development workshop because $75 represents a substantial sum when you're living paycheck to paycheck. But the woman with $10,000 saved might attend that same workshop and ultimately connect with someone who refers her to a position paying $8,000 more annually or offers her freelance work that supplements her income for years. The safety net doesn't make you careless with money, but it absolutely makes you more willing to invest strategically in opportunities. I've witnessed this pattern unfold repeatedly. Women who establish their first meaningful savings account frequently experience sudden acceleration in their professional advancement, not because having money directly generates promotions, but because financial security provides them the confidence to pursue opportunities that financially precarious women simply cannot risk pursuing. Let's address something that rarely appears in financial advice content, but every woman recognizes from lived experience: the social dimensions of money. When you're perpetually stressed about your financial circumstances, it influences how you engage with other people in subtle but meaningful ways. Well, you might decline invitations because you can't comfortably participate in activities that cost money. You might feel embarrassed about your financial struggles and become increasingly isolated. You might even develop quiet resentment toward friends or siblings who appear more financially comfortable. Having $10,000 in savings doesn't eliminate all social complexity around money, but it does give you options. You can participate in birthday dinners without internal panic. You can contribute to group gifts without calculating whether you'll regret it by month's end. You can be genuinely present in friendships instead of constantly performing mental arithmetic about what various activities will cost you. So there it is. $10,000 isn't simply digits displayed in your banking app. It's a comprehensive psychological transformation that touches every dimension of your daily existence. From sleeping peacefully through the night to entering difficult conversations with genuine confidence instead of quiet desperation, this milestone initiates a cascade of positive changes that most women never anticipate. If you're currently looking at a savings balance that feels impossibly far from 5 figures, please don't lose hope. Begin modestly, remain consistent, and remember that the woman you become while saving your first $10,000 is infinitely more valuable than the money itself. That growth, that discipline, that identity shift, those are the real gifts that keep compounding long after you've reached your goal. If this conversation was helpful, I'd love for you to subscribe and share this with another woman who might need to hear it. You've got this, and your future self will thank you.